In spite of the hymn we just sang, we really don't know how many persons came to visit the baby Jesus. The assumption has been all along that 3 gifts meant 3 visitors. Nor do we know the gender of the persons who came. Do you know what would have happened if there had been 3 wise women in separate directions around time, helped deliver the baby, cleaned the stable, made a casserole, and brought disposable diapers? Jokes aside, several scholars have actually suggested that it's entirely possible that women could have been among the Magi portrayed in this story we just read. Matthew is the only gospel that says anything at all about the Magi, and you may be surprised to learn that this gospel does not give us a number or a gender or royal status to the wise ones from the east. The idea that the Magi were kings didn't come into the Christian tradition until about the 5th century. And the word Magi actually means magician. We get all of this today because we're celebrating the Feast of the Epiphany, which means manifestation. It's the hinge, this day is the hinge between Christmas and this whole long season of the season of Epiphany, when God's manifestation is lived out and we're supposed to live it out in our lives, otherwise known as what we call in the church the green season. This is the manifestation of Jesus to the Gentiles. And remember that the Magi, whoever they were not Jewish. There's a lot in this story to unpack and to think about. Remember that each of the Gospels was written with an audience in mind, and Matthew's Gospel was written for his fellow Jews. The very first chapter starts with a genealogy beginning with Abraham and brings to prove that Jesus was actually the Messiah, the Christ. And then Matthew turns to the birth of Jesus from Joseph's perspective. In all of our Christmas pageants, we group the shepherds and the wise men together around the manger. Not so, because the shepherds came from nearby. Bethlehem is only about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And the shepherds came from nearby and the wise men came from afar. And Matthew's trying to show his readers that the God of Israel has turned God's face of mercy to all nations. That God is a God for all persons of every race and nation. Which, if you think about it, was a hard learning for the earliest Jewish followers of Jesus. They knew themselves to be God's chosen people, and now they're learning that God chooses everybody. In other words, the story of the Magi cracks open the story of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, which is how Matthew puts that in that genealogy, to let us see that there's a place for those who are far away and those who are near to love Jesus and follow him. One important detail that caught my attention this week is the story of the Magi coming is found in chapter 2 of Matthew's Gospel. And the last verses of this Gospel in chapter 28, Jesus sends out his disciples to all nations. So Matthew again is underscoring the point that the Magi came to Jesus and then Jesus sent the disciples out. Another important piece of today's gospel is its contemporary ring. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus are refugees. They are undocumented. They have to flee Egypt to escape death. They get on the road not knowing where they'll end up or if they'll ever return home. The Holy Family has company in our own day. People affected by circumstances beyond their control, without any understanding of the wicked dynamics at work seeking their demise. In most cases, refugees in every era set out from a home that has been stolen from them, literally or by threat, and they move to a new place without any visible means of support, no maps or credit cards or relatives to go to. The flight to Egypt is akin to Syria and Palestine and Iraq and Sudan and parts of Mexico. When we think about the many undocumented persons who are refugees in our own country, let's not forget that Mary and Joseph and Jesus were in the same straits. We don't know anything about their life in Egypt. Later in the same chapter of Matthew, we learn that Mary and Joseph were able to return to the Holy Land. What if they hadn't been welcomed and been able to have a stable life in Egypt for a few years? What if they were treated as suspect because they were Jewish? What if they'd faced deportation? This is speculation, of course. Still, we need to remember that most persons in our country who are being maligned and targeted for deportation are folks fleeing poverty and oppression like Mary and Joseph. And there are persons in our own community who may be targeted. Epiphany is more than about inclusion of the Gentiles in the church. It's a celebration of breaking down the dividing walls, the end of hostilities between groups of people, as we read in the letter to the Ephesians. It challenges us to reconsider all the people who we think of as outsiders. And it challenges us, all of us, to abandon our tribalism and expand our tents to welcome those whom we would prefer not to love. God dispenses divine love at Epiphany and light with non-discriminating generosity. God never asks, where's your passport, or what's your family heritage, or what's your class or orientation or race. The light of Christ attends every manger, every household, every church, every community and country to be places of welcome and inclusion and belonging. Epiphany is about putting to work the light that was born in Bethlehem. It is the season to leave the manger and our own comfort and enter the places in our world which are messy and complex and full of pain. To shine a light on that which is wrong, to illuminate that which hides in the dark, to bring healing balm to those who have been damaged by others. God's light still and always shines. It's our task to carry it forward. Amanda Gorman, the young poet who read at President Biden's inauguration 4 years ago, wrote these words as a New Year's poem, which are fitting for Epiphany. What was cursed, we will cure. What was plagued, we will prove pure. Where we tend to argue, we will try to agree. Those fortunes we forswore, now the future we foresee. Where we weren't awake, we're now awake. Those moments we missed are now these moments we make. The moments we meet and our hearts all together beaten, now all together beat. Amen.